Hi, Otto here for Bavarian Autosport. In today's DIY video, we'll be replacing front control arms on an E60 or E61 5 Series BMW. Now this will be specific to the four-wheel drive six-cylinder versions of this chassis. Other models and other versions will be similar, but the specifics will apply just to these models. Now I'll be narrating this video for you, but our product specialist, Greg, will actually be doing the work. Let's take a look at some of the parts and tools involved in this video. Here we have the control arms we'll be replacing. This is what we typically call the upper control arm, also commonly known as the thrust arm, strut arm, or compression or tension arm, depending on the application. Here at BAV Auto, we typically call them the upper control arm. This is the one that takes all of the suspension and vehicle loading when you're driving and braking. This bushing takes all of the vehicle weight through the bushing when you're driving and braking, and this is what typically will cause a front end vibration at 40 plus miles per hour, or when you put the brakes on, as long as you don't have a warped rotor. You'll notice this arm does not have a ball joint. The ball joint is bolted to the hub spindle assembly and is replaced separately if needed. This is what we typically call the lower control arm. This locates the strut assembly away from the frame rail and keeps it in place from side to side. You notice you have the bushing and a ball joint. Both can wear. We'll find that typically we'll be replacing the upper control arm and or bushing about twice as often as we do the lower control arms. On this vehicle, we'll replace both. We can refer to the Bentley repair manual for the E60 and E61 chassis for any details, torque specs, or any differences on a non-four-wheel drive or a V8 model. And don't forget, all of these parts and accessories are available at our online store at bavauto.com or call our advisors at 800-535-2002 for assistance or your ordering. Now let's get to work. We're now under the vehicle. We've removed all of the undercar splash shields in order to access the control arm mounting points. This smaller arm is commonly called the lower control arm. This E60 chassis employs the common tapered pin ball joint for the lower control arm. The joint can be separated using the common pickle fork or by hitting the joint or steering knuckle with a hammer, as we've shown in other control arm videos. This larger control arm is commonly known as the upper control arm, thrust arm, strut arm, or compression arm. In removing the lower control arm, first remove the ball joint securing nut using a 24mm combination wrench. Now remove the control arm bushing through bolt using an 18mm offset box wrench on the bolt head and an 18mm socket or wrench on the nut. Release the ball joint tapered pin using a pickle fork or heavy dead blow hammer as discussed earlier. Install the new control arm by inserting the tapered ball joint pin through the steering knuckle and threading on the securing nut. Line up the bushing in the mounting bracket and insert the bushing through bolt and thread on the nut. Do not tighten the bushing through bolt and nut until the suspension is compressed to normal ride height. We'll tighten the ball joint nut by using a Torx bit to hold the spindle while turning the nut with our wrench. We're now ready to remove and replace the upper control or thrust arm. In order to access the control arm bushing through bolt, remove the 8mm screw and push rivet on this plastic shield. Push the shield out of the way. Disconnect the headlight leveling link using a 10mm wrench and socket. Use a socket and offset box wrench to loosen the control arm bushing bolt. Remove the nut and leave the bolt in place. This ball joint uses the newer style straight pin ball joint and requires that the spindle be secured with a Torx bit while loosening the nut. Insert the Torx bit and assure that the bit is fully seated into the spindle end. Use a combination wrench to loosen and remove the nut. Set the new control arm into place over the ball joint spindle and run the nut up into place. Place the control arm bushing into the mounting bracket and insert the through bolt. Install the nut, but do not tighten it until the vehicle is resting on the suspension. Using the Torx bit and combination wrench, tighten the ball joint nut. Connect the headlight leveling link. To tighten the control arm bushing through bolts, either place the vehicle on the ground or on ramps, or carefully use a jack to load the suspension. If using a jack, very carefully raise the jack to compress the suspension. Stop as you detect the weight on the jack stands or lift arms changing. Tighten the through bolts and nuts on the control arm bushings. Lower the jack if one was used. Reposition the control arm bushing shield and replace all of the undercar splash shields and panels. You can now fully lower the car and test drive. Well, there you have that job. Not too bad, and it went pretty quickly for us. Remember, if you have a front end shake in any of your BMW models like this 5 Series, one of the first things to consider is the upper or thrust control arm bushings or the ball joints on that thrust arm. Remember, all of the parts and tools you've seen here are available in our online store at bavauto.com or call our advisors at 800-535-2002. Now, if you've liked this video, hit your like button, please, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Thanks for watching, and let's go ahead and get going on one more video.